Hi everyone, it's Deja Yetmir from CrochetEverAfter.com, and right now I'm going to show you how to double crochet into your foundation chain. And this specific tutorial is just going to show you how to work that first row into your foundation chain. Other tutorials I have available will show you different parts of the project and how to double crochet into those, or you can watch my double crochet from the very beginning tutorial, which will cover everything. But if you're learning from a friend or a book and you're not sure where to place your hook when working into the foundation chain, this tutorial is going to show you just how to do that. So let's get started. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to double crochet into your foundation chain. If you need to learn how to double crochet all together, I have a tutorial for that. This is just going to show foundation chain, so if you're confused on that aspect, you can watch this quickly. So I'm just going to go ahead and start a foundation chain. I'm going to yarn over and pull through. As I do, I always go to the shaft with my loops so that my foundation chains and all stitches are even and consistent. And I pull through by pointing my hook down so it slides easily through my loops. So if you're a beginner crocheter, those are handy tips on how to keep your hook, how to make it stitch easily, and also how to keep your chains nice and even. So depending on your pattern, it's going to tell you how many foundation chains to make. You always make 3 more foundation chains then you need double crochets, because your very first, or technically the last 3 you made, are going to give you the correct height for your double crochet. If I was to just work into the next hook for my double crochet, I would have a really squished first double crochet. So you always have a chain of 3 to create the correct height. So when you're reading your pattern, when you work into your foundation chain, it's either going to say beginning in the 4th chain from your hook, double crochet across, or it'll just say double crochet in the 4th chain from your hook. There's a few different ways it's written. All that means is you are going to yarn over and count back from this loop on your hook. This loop is a working loop, so it doesn't count as a chain. You find the first chain underneath, and they look like stacked V's. So count 4 V's. You have 1, 2, 3, and here's my 4th. So that's the stitch that I want to double crochet into. You can choose where you want to enter your hook. You can either enter it just in this back loop. You can try to go under both loops like this. This one's the most difficult, trying to get it through both. You can go through the bottom bump, which are these little dashes that you can see running along the bottom, or you can go through the back and bottom bump. It's completely up to you. I like to go just in the back loop. It's the fastest and easiest for me, and usually I'm either seaming my project or putting an edging on it, so this bottom 2 stitches that I don't work into, I end up working into them in the end usually. So it's not important how they look to me. If it's important how the bottom looks, I will usually take the time and go through my bottom bump, because it'll give me a nice V stitch along the bottom of my edge. So if you're making maybe just a rectangular double crochet scarf, you work into that bottom bump and you'll have a nice edge along the bottom. But if you're putting fringe on it, it won't matter. You won't see it. So let's begin our double crochets. So I yarn over and I count my 4, so 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I insert my hook into the loop and I yarn over, or I call layover, this first stitch, because it's just kind of a laying over the yarn to catch it on my hook. Then I'm going to pull up that loop, and I always put all my loops on my shaft to keep them consistent. And then for a double crochet, you yarn over and you only go through the first 2 loops. So you pull through those first 2, and you have 2 more left on your hook. Then to finish your double crochet, you yarn over and you pull through the next 2. So now I've created 2 double crochets. And you're saying, no, you only did 1. Well, when you do double crochets and above, most times you're going to count the first chain 3 of any row as a double crochet. It's very rare where the designer won't count this chain 3 as a stitch. Most of the time you're going to count it as a stitch. If you're not sure, you might have to look at your stitch count to see if they're adding it, if they don't tell you specifically if it counts or not. I usually count it as a stitch in my patterns, so I'm just going to do it that way for this tutorial. So I'm going to create my next double crochet by yarning over. You always yarn over once for a double crochet before you insert anything into a stitch. So now I'm going to insert into my next loop, yarn over, and pull up my loop. And notice that I keep my loop the size of my shaft. I don't pull them all up loose and tall. You're kind of working diagonal. You're going to diagonally bring it up, yarn over, and diagonally bring it up. And then it's going to give you the nice twist. If I just pulled them all up tall and brought them over, it's going to create a really large stitch. So if you're crocheting and your gauge is normally really large for a double crochet, that might be why. You want to keep your loops the same size as your shaft. So push them to your shaft, get enough tension that your loops are the size of your shaft, and then you're working diagonally, pulling them upwards. So I'm inserting into my next chain, pulling up. So you'll see that I go at a 45-degree angle to bring my stitches through, which is different from, say, a single crochet where you are pulling your stitches up and you're working parallel on top of your work. So I pull up, and you'll get into the rhythm of yarning over as you work. And you'll see that as I push my hook through, I almost just kind of, my yarn's already kind of there. I don't have to really yarn over. It just is already kind of laying there as I push my hook through. So I just twist to catch it and pull it through. And then you do the traditional yarn over on the second part, which always comes from back to front. And then I always twist my hook down towards my work because it pulls easily through my stitches. You'll see if I don't point my hook down that I get caught on my stitches. So point it straight down at your work and pull through, and it'll slide easily through. So if you're getting caught as you work, that might be the reason. You might not be pointing down. And as you work, you're going to notice that you'll just automatically start pointing it down without even thinking about it. So I'm going to work all the way to this last chain. So you can see sometimes your last chain is difficult to see because when you're making your foundation chain, you might have made that first foundation chain slightly small. You were eager to start and just kind of pulled a little too tight on that very first one. And your slip knot could have been big, so sometimes it makes it difficult to see. So I have one more chain here. If I wasn't sure, what I would do is I would stop and count how many V's I have to see how many stitches I've made so far. So we'll do that anyways. We don't count the one that's on our hook, even though it looks like a V. That's just our working loop. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13 for my chain 3. So there should be 14 double crochets, and I only have 13. So I'm going to work into that last one. Oops. To create my 14th double crochet. Now my foundation chain and first row of double crochets is complete. And I like to count the V's. It's a little bit easier to see than counting the stitches across. I think it's a little bit so that no matter what stitch you're working, you're always going to have this V on top, so that's much easier to recognize than trying to figure out which stitch you're working and if you're counting, if you're missing a loop or anything, you might miss counting these, but your V's are quite easy to count. So that is how you double crochet into your foundation chain.